It's like we always think, because of the pandemic now that we are in with the COVID-19, that viruses are always bad, right? The SARS-CoV-2 is causing COVID-19, and it's a terrible thing. I mean, viruses are like enemies, right? Well, viruses are kind of like humans. Like SARS-CoV-2 is like a human that is destroying the planet. SARS-CoV-2 is destroying, in a way, the human body, right? Well, that's not actually like that always, because there are things that are called proviruses or bacteriophages, which are also viruses, and they're found in the human virome, it's called, like the biome, where you have bacteria, you also have a virome. And there are like many different kinds of viruses that already inhabit our body and that are completely benign. So I think that the issue of sustainability is essentially accepting that we are a virus on this planet, is about becoming a benign virus, a pro-virus, so to say, on our planet, to be able to live in harmony with the body that we inhabit, which is the planet in this case. And our session in the economy, I think, is going to be a lot about that, about how we essentially, as humans, have to sort of adapt our economy to be creating a virome, a biome, or an existing human economy that is actually in harmony with the existing planet. So that's a little sort of speech from me, since we are already anyway live streaming to you, and you are there on the screen waiting for us.
I think the pandemic has definitely shown a lot of unknown connections, including the one between planetary health and human health. And we actually have a bunch of Ashoka fellows that are doing incredible work on this, including by, for instance, rallying healthcare professionals to be climate stewards. And there's a whole movement around this pioneered by our fellow in the US, Gary Cohen, that I totally recommend you to check out. How about the technical issues, Irene? Have they been fixed now?
They're saying it'll take another minute or so. Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we're gonna get there. And there's also another fabulous fellow, in case you don't know her, Kinari Webb. She's doing one of the sessions today. I'm not sure exactly in which, but she's based on the West Coast and yet works in Malaysia or Indonesia, if I'm not sure. I think it's Malaysia, to kind of develop a new economic model, speaking about the topic of our conversation, through which people that care for the environment and that refrain themselves from illegal logging and other environmentally damaging activities are rewarded in this type of a closed economy system with healthcare benefits. And it's a wonderful model. You would love it, Uygar, what she's developed there at scale. And now she's taking that to Madagascar, actually, to scale it there. And it really works, because what she says, is that people are not inherently damaging the environment because they hate a clean environment and the clean climate, but they really require the basics. And as we were talking, Gonzalo, this kind of economic basic needs met and healthcare basic needs met. And this is why in the developing world, at least, you see a lot of environmentally damaging activity going on. So the question is, how do you design a system to flip that coin and to make it work totally different? And Kinari has some interesting already working ideas on that. And this last time I talked to her, she was planning to also write a book on that. So hopefully those lessons are going to be spread out around the world.
There's research that's been done in almost in every country, and it says that almost in every country, 95% and more people care about the environment. So there's absolutely, you can say that every single human being essentially cares for the environment. The only issue is, how do you make that care turn into action, and how do we construct the system so that people who care can actually act, in protecting the environment, or in being in harmony with their environment and with nature. I think that's
all right, guys. We have successfully switched. Yay! Okay.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, wherever you might be and on whichever time zone you might be. Welcome to the session, Our New Economic Model. We live better if we rebalance our relationship with the planet. My name is Corina Murafa, and I am based in Bucharest, Romania, which is my hometown, and which is where I'm also leading our global work on planet and climate, together with my colleague Pip Witten, who's based in the UK. I was really glad this morning when I clicked on ACMS and saw the first session that was live streamed, to saw that it was about children and how children are taking over and how they think and act as change makers from a very early age. And although the session was about this topic in general, what the kids were saying in 50% of their messaging was all around planet, climate, and what we need to be doing and what they want us to be doing as adults to safeguard the planet. And this was just such a positive way of starting my morning. And here we are now. This is the first official session of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit that deals with the topic of planet and climate. And I'm really happy on this occasion to introduce my colleague Irene Wu, who's based in DC. So good morning, Irene. You're quite a number of hours before us, and she's our knowledge and impact lead at Next Now, Planet and Climate, which is Ashoka's global program on planet and climate. How are you, Irene, this morning? And please share with us the rules for the session and kind of what we need to be aware, technologically speaking.
Thank you, Karina. And good morning, everyone from DC. Like Karina had already said, I work with Next Now on knowledge and impact. And today I will be coordinating this session and handling the tech side that I can handle. But as we know, we just started off with a bit of a glitch. And I think we'll be smooth sailing from now. There are very few rules for today. I know that all of us are basically on swap cards. If you look to your right-hand side, there's the live discussion chat box that a lot of us have already utilized while we waited for the session to start. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to type into the chat, and I will be sort of translating all this back to our speakers and guests today. Usual rules about, courteous participation in any kind of discussions apply here. And I will be, shortly after we introduce everyone, I'll be sharing a quick poll, a link. And so feel free to click on that link once I share it, and then take part in a quick poll. And for now, I will pass the ball back to Karina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene. Also, just to let you know that we've created a separate planet and climate chat for the whole summit of Ashoka Changemaker Summit, because overall in the summit, there are more than 2,000 people that have registered and are joining from various parts of the world's various sessions. And since this one is really just the first one out of more than 10 sessions that are going to be focusing specifically on planet and climate, we thought of opening this chat that you can find on Swapcard. And after the end of this conversation, feel free to join us there for the whole of the summit, for the rest of the 3 days that we have in front of us, and connect to speakers and to attendees from this session, from the other sessions as well, just to kind of make sure that we stand out in the crowd of 2,000 attendees of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit. So without further ado, I want to really briefly introduce to us our panelists. They are Brendan Dennison, who's joining us from West Virginia in the United States of America, who's an Ashoka Fellow there and the founder of Coalfield Development Corporation. Unlike the name, he's not developing coal fields. We will soon find out what he does. The second Ashoka Fellow who's joining us is Uygar Yozesmi, who's a senior fellow from Turkey, and he's a serial social entrepreneur in the field of sustainability, environment, and climate. Also the founder of goodfortrust.org, which is a really interesting marketplace that is really embodying this new economic model that we're trying to crack the nut of this morning. We also have with us from the corporate sector, Gonzalo Sáenz de Miera, who's the global climate lead at Iberdrola in the chairman's office. Iberdrola, for those of you who do not know it, is a big multinational company that focuses on renewable energy primarily and has started to do more and more on that. So we'll find out more from Gonzalo about this. And before we get started with our speakers, I really want to do a poll with all of you that are attending. I don't know how many of you are attending in reality, but it's been 400 people that have actually signed up for this session. So if you look into the Swapcard chat, Irene is gonna post there a poll that's gonna be asking you whether you see around you a new economic model emerging, yes or no. So let's just get this poll started. And we're gonna, as we hear our speakers talking, we're gonna go back to the results of the poll. So keep putting them in, and let's start with Brandon as a first introduction. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in West Virginia, Brandon, and also whether you're seeing around you in the world, in your community and beyond your community, things that make you think that our economic model is shifting, is changing. The floor is yours, Brandon.
Sure thing. Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on wherever you are. It's morning here, and hello from what's known as the coal fields of Appalachia. So Appalachia is, we've had a phrase for a long time. I am born and raised here in West Virginia, and the Appalachians it's a mountain chain, sort of runs up and down the eastern part of the country, and there's a lot of coal deep in those mountains. And so there's a phrase that's popular around here called king coal. So coal is really powerful. It has been powerful economically, but as the economic power of coal continues to collapse, the political power of coal continues to have a grip in many ways. And the cultural power of coal continues to have a grip. So it's so wrapped up in our identity, who we are and what we do. We're proud as a region. A lot of the United States economy has been built and literally powered by coal. And so it's hard to struggle with, if we're not going to be coal country anymore, then what are we going to be? And it's an economic struggle. But in many ways, it's a cultural and identity struggle as well. Our organization, Coalfield Development, our tagline is rebuilding the Appalachian economy from the ground up. So the thinking there is that our economy has been built before, but it was all built around this one extractive industry, which is coal. And so now we need to rebuild this economy to be better for people, and to be better for our environment, and to be truly sustainable, and more fair and more just. Doing that is easier said than done, obviously. So we are a region in transition. The transition is happening, but a lot of people have not necessarily decided they wanted it to happen. It's sort of happening to us rather than for us or by us in too many circumstances. As the employment in coal industry has continued to decline, and it's been a long-term, decade after decade, the number of jobs in mining keeps going down. But we've yet to redefine what we're going to be post-coal. And so there's this economic crisis is setting in. Even before the pandemic, we had unemployment like what folks would have seen in the Great Depression of the 1930s. And with the economic crisis comes all other kinds of problems. We have a substance use disorder, a drug addiction problem that leads to an overdose crisis. Hundreds, thousands of people dying from drug overdoses, which is really a signal of hopelessness. We have people here who are struggling and hurting and not seeing a brighter future on the horizon. And that leads to all kinds of challenges. So that's the bad news, so to speak. But we are seeing this, I call it an entrepreneurial movement, and it's a very much an organic movement. A lot of times it's young people, not in all circumstances, but entrepreneurs who grew up here, who love this place, the beauty of this place, the music, the art, the culture, the sense of connection to place that we have. We want to be here. We know this place can be so much more. Our potential is so much greater than what we've been realizing. And we know we can be more than just one thing. We've been told for so long, you're coal country, you should go into the mining industry. The only way to feed your family is in the mining industry. But a lot of us know that surely that's not true. And so at Coalfield Development, we start and invest in employment-based social enterprises. The enterprises are designed to model what a more diversified, just, and sustainable economy can look like. We helped start the first solar installation company in our community. We have a local sustainable agriculture company. We make wood products out of reclaimed building material. We make t-shirts out of 100% recycled content. And so my hope continues to grow, actually, that from the enterprises we have, from other enterprises I'm seeing throughout the region, I do think a new economy is starting to take hold. We need more support so it can happen faster, though. I mentioned the addiction crisis, other health care crisis, economic crisis. We need to accelerate the transition so that we don't leave people behind.
Thanks so much, Brandon. So, to sum it up, I would say that you are seeing a new model emerging, but it's slow. And I'm curious to hear Gonzalo's perspective on that, whether you, Gonzalo, in Spain and with the international overview that you have in Iberdrola, do you see this shift of a new economic model appearing at wide scale or not?
Okay, good morning to everyone. I'm from Madrid. It's a real pleasure to be today with you. So I would like to share with you 4 points, initially. The question, are we seeing a new economic model? I see good examples. I see nice experiences, but to be honest, not a general change. So we are seeing really minor changes, completely insufficient considering the dimension of the environmental problem of climate change. And the problem is that this is very urgent, and the later we act, the more costly and the more problematic it will be. The second point, I would like to mention the implication of the current health and economic crisis on the environment. So this crisis has very negative economic impacts and again, increases inequality, and I think this is a big problem. But in terms of the environment, this health crisis has been a blow to reality that has shown us that the current model is not sustainable from an environmental point of view. And there is a growing consensus that there is no sustainable economy without a sustainable environment. And this is a very important achievement because without this awareness we are having now, there is no possibility to change. The third message I would like to share with you is what do we need to do? So we are in face of a huge problem that is climate change. So we are seeing now some of the impact of climate change, but science is warning us that we will have a much bigger impact in the near future. So for this reason, to avoid the worst scenarios of climate change and the great cost it will have in the future, we need urgently to do 2 things. First is mitigation. We need to decarbonize the whole economy, and in particular, the energy model. The current, the climate change is the cause mainly of the current energy model based on fossil fuels. So we have transport based on fossil fuels, electricity on fossil fuels, heating and cooling. So we need to completely and quickly change this model based on 2 pillars. On energy efficiency, we need to consume less energy and we need to replace fossil fuels with renewables. This is the first task. And the second is adaptation. We need to adapt to this climate change. So how can we do it? Our view is that we have the technologies. Thanks to the revolution, to the technological revolution we have seen in the last 10 years, now renewables, batteries, green hydrogen are becoming more and more competitive comparing with traditional technologies. So it's amazing. Today, renewables are the cheapest technologies to generate electricity in 90% of the planet. And this is a big change of the last 10 years. So what do we need? So now green is becoming cheaper, is improving the competitiveness of the economy. It can create lasting and quality jobs. What do we need? Our view is that because we have the technology, we need social and cultural changes. So that means changes in behaviors and lifestyle, and this has a short-term cost. We need policies, public policies that move the economy and investment in this direction. So we need fiscal policy, innovation policies, educational policies, and new business models. So in these three things, social and cultural changes, policies, and new business model, the role of social entrepreneurs is key. And we have very good and successful examples, and one of them is plastics. So in just 5 years, there is an increased awareness of society has led to changes in individual behaviors. We have seen policies that regulate its use and firms developing new successful business model based on plastic recycle, reuses, and use reductions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gonzalo. It was very interesting listening to you because I realized that maybe the question that we asked is too simplistic, whether we see this new economic model emerging, yay or nay, because in reality, what you're saying is that there are a couple of the ingredients in there, like technology, as you were pointing out with renewables, decreasing their cost exponentially. But for instance, when we're talking about behaviors, policies, and you said new economic models, the situation is not as optimistic. I mean, I would beg to differ with you a little bit on the new business models part, seeing, you know, what our fellows are doing around the world, like Brandon and Uygar. And this gives me the opportunity to hand it over to Uygar, who's been a serial social entrepreneur for many years and has sort of proven in place that has sort of proven that these new economic models can work. But Uygar, you know, my question for you is whether the model is shifting, right? Like take one level up the stairs and look at what's around you and tell us how you feel about it. But of course, you know, share with us what it is that you're doing as well and that you've been doing.
Well, I mean, in the Ashoka perspective, at least, if we are thinking about, you know, creating change, it's really looking at the root causes to be able to create a systems change. Well, is the root cause of the climate crisis that we're facing right now 3 degrees by 250 already? Or the biodiversity crisis? I mean, we're talking about, you know, 68% drop in vertebrates from 1970 till 2016. I mean, that is a crisis. 68% of populations dropping. I mean, this is like, you know, incredible. I mean, if you look at weight, terrestrial vertebrates, wild animals are 2%. Us humans and our animals, domesticated industrial animals, are 98% of the total weight. That is a crisis. Now, this crisis, where is the root cause of this crisis? Is the root cause of this crisis technology? If we just shift the right technology, will we solve this problem? No. So we need to look at the root cause. What is really the root cause of all of this happening? Is it human nature? Greed? My God, no. I mean, if it was greed and human nature, I mean, look at our situation before we had developed this kind of global economy. Were we destroying the planet with our greed? No. So it's not really about human nature either. So what is it really about? What is the root cause, right? So the root cause, to my opinion, humble opinion, is the economy. Now, the eco in this economy, we always forget what it means. The eco is the same as ecology, meaning oikos, right? Our home and the land that feeds us, eco, they have it in common. Now, them being in common, we have forgotten that without ecology, we can't really have economy. That means like we can't really separate the two and then hope that we can have, you know, all of these crises disappear. Now, we also in the sort of social entrepreneurship sphere always think about ecosystems, right? Now, ecosystem, is it the economy there or is it the ecology there? What is that eco? So if that eco is really the oikos, right, then we can look, for example, to a true ecosystem. on this planet, the Amazon forest. The Amazon forest has been on this planet for 55 million years. In those 55 million years, has the Amazon forest as an incredible economy, an incredible ecosystem, which is super productive, super biodiverse, destroyed the planet in 55 million years? No, it's one of the biggest economies in the world. It's probably more complex and more diverse than what the human economy exists. So then a simple question comes to mind. Can we have an economy that is like the Amazon forest, that is in harmony with nature, right? So then what is the property of the Amazon forest besides being productive and super diverse? Everything there is circular and there is no waste. It is an economy that is beneficial, that doesn't produce any waste and is in harmony with the world. So let's think about a human economy, which is in the same way. And that's where we come up with the notion of what we call the prosumer economy. With the prosumer economy, we're saying like we need a macro scale is very important, circular economy among social enterprises that essentially deepen their supply chain to that level that circularity is maintained and who have minimal ecological and social impact. You can also call that like, minimize externalities to the environment and to society and so forth. But that is the kind of economy that we need to sort of build from the grassroots up if we can in any way shift things. And that's what we're doing at For Trust. We have 128 such social enterprises that have come together, that they are building these circularity. So we have 128 trees, nowhere close to a forest or the Amazon, but 128 such social enterprises and about 17,000 insects that are part of this ecosystem, people, prosumers. And that's what we're trying to do. And we are seeing the shift. People want it. People in the street want it. Youngsters want it. Young people want it. They want to create a new future and they want to become more part of such an economy than the existing economy, which is being exploitative.
Thank you, Uygar. I was about to ask you, so if you see this shift more concretely, but just a very short follow-up question to what you were saying. Besides the model that you have created with the ecosystem and economy that you were describing, do you see these models anywhere else in the world? Do you see this thing scaled, this kind of new development of really an economic whole ecosystem?
Absolutely. I mean, there are at the town level, like at municipal level, things like transition towns. There are hundreds of transition towns all around the world. They're trying to do it at the local level. They're not building such a model like we are doing, a prosumer economy. There's a very strong degrowth movement, which are essentially coming together. A lot of eco-villages are part of this system as well, but they're all very localized. I think that's the issue. And I fully agree with Gonzalo that these are very small initiatives still, but everything starts small. The whole point is, can you grow like a forest? When you plant one tree after the other, and when you do this together, when you bring people together in all different movements, all different social enterprises to become an ecosystem, then it can start becoming transformative from the grassroots level. But for that to really take deep root, you of course need the policy, the political environment, and also other people working on these areas to make this economy flourish, to create a fertile environment for this new economy to emerge. You need also policy level changes. So yes, there is the appetite. There are examples. It's all around the world. However, the problem is we need to continuously work on the political and policy environment as well.
Thank you.
I would build on that. I mean, I think there's a question in the chat about political leadership. I mean, of course, it's important, we need a strategy and a plan from the top, and we need policy changes. But that will never stick without the bottom up. You need both. And I think in the US, a lot of the problem is a lot of the policy changes driven from the top are not connecting with a lot of the realities on the ground. So can a renewable economy take root in extraction communities? It absolutely can. I mean, we have former coal miners on our payroll that install solar systems and grow local food and are engaged in sustainable biomanufacturing. So it is possible, but the problem is a lot of times the transition, all the focus is on the policy and the new business models aren't considered. I love Gonzalo's point there. And so when you can't tangibly show someone what a new approach looks like, it's hard for them to get on board with large scale change until they can really see and touch and feel and experience what that change could mean and positively for their lives.
Thank you, Brendan. I mean, you've all spoken a lot about the grassroots level, and that's wonderful because we are in a community of social entrepreneurs. But I cannot help but point towards the elephant in the room, which are the big players, the big guys, and what is their role? Because there was also a comment coming in the chat. We need people pressure for sure, but we need big organizations to acknowledge their huge role in the ecosystem, not only investing or being allies in the sustainable movement, but actually redesigning their business model. And since Gonzalo is the only corporate representative in the room, I would ask him to share with us his reflections on that. You are among the big league players, and until the big league shifts their business model towards something that's regenerative and not extractive, probably the needle will not shift fast enough. What's your take on that, about the role of big corporations?
Okay, thank you, Corina. Very interesting debate. I think is for big corporations, we have to understand that we have to be aligned with the interest of the society. And now there is a mega trend in the world for green growth, and people want a clean environment. People want to fight climate change, and for this reason, firms need to follow society. And if you follow society, you are going to be more profitable in the future. And if you don't make this mega trend, you are going to have big problems in the future. So this is a mega trend. I think I agree with Brandon. I mean, policies are really important, okay? But with this green revolution, we need policies. Policies are fundamental because it's the way the people, the behaviors of firms and the behaviors of citizens are changed through policies. But the reality now is that we have technologies that are competitive. So it's at the same, citizens, we are very important. Why we are very important? Because we vote, and we can vote to parties that fight climate change or not. We can consume, we are consumers, okay? And in the way we consume affect, businesses, and we are investing because we are investing our savings, and the way we invest will influence firms. And we are producers. We can produce now our own energy. So the role of citizens are very important. I would like to say another thing, Corina, if you let 1 minute. I think these recovery programs, that are launching in many parts of the world, are a huge opportunity for everyone, for change the system, but also for social entrepreneurs. Why? Because those recovery programs, for instance, in Europe, they are very powerful. Due to their size, will have the ability to redefine the growth model and to create jobs. And if all of us, we present, a nice or intelligent projects that are sustainable in the future, I think is a huge opportunity to develop these new projects. We have to support activities that have a future. And for us, it's very important that models, Uyghur, you presented models, new business models that have to be sustainable from an environmental point of view, but needs also to be sustainable from an economic perspective. And if you have both, you can really change society in the next years. And we are in a point in these 5 next years are going to be are going to be critical to fight climate change and to define a new economic model. And I think with policies, with citizens, and with entrepreneurs, we can really change things.
But Gonzalo, you know, what is really economic sustainability? And this is a provocative question on purpose, because somebody in the chat was telling us, you know, that the problem is that we're hitting for exponential growth in a world of finite resources. So, you know, this kind of growth in percentage terms year after year after year after year, which is after all, our understanding of economic sustainability may not be what economic sustainability needs to look like in a new model. So what is the economic, because you're an economist as well, right?
Yes, economic sustainability for the energy sector will mean less energy, to consume less energy, and the energy you consume is cleaner. But definitely, that's why I say energy efficiency is the key. You know, but electricity has a very an advantage in that, because electricity generation is clean with renewables and is cheap. And with this clean electricity, you can decarbonize the rest of the sectors using less energy, because when you use, for example, an electric car, you know that you use 4 times less energy than an internal combustion car. So the key for sustainability is less energy and cleaner energy, but less energy is very important.
Thanks so much for that comment. And you were speaking earlier, you know, about models and what can happen actually bottom up. And here's, you know, I'm using my moderator's privilege to let you know about a program that we're working on at Ashoka in Europe, in Central and Eastern Europe, in partnership with Climate Kick. We are launching, basically, we have launched it last year, a community of change makers that came together this year in order to really design and incubate new ideas on sustainable agriculture, new models for reindustrialization. And our project is called the Community Lab for Climate Change Makers in Central and Eastern Europe. And in the chat, my colleagues will post there a link for an ideation session where we invite you to join right after this panel, particularly those of you that are from Central and Eastern Europe, because it's important for us not to just be inspired by what we hear from Ashoka Fellows, but also, since everyone is a change maker and should be a change maker, to come up with their own ideas and incubate them and so on. And there's quite a substantial amount of seed funding that we're also making available through this partnership for social entrepreneurs in Central and Eastern Europe. So follow the link in the chat and join us. And I finished my advertising.
It's really positive momentum. I mean, everything you just laid out is positive momentum. And I want to remind us that in the US, under very bad political conditions, you know, no doubt, last year, the US consumed for the first time more energy from renewable sources than we did from dirty sources. So even under the worst possible political environment, because citizens are engaged, because social entrepreneurs care about this, you know, positive change, it can still happen even under really difficult political circumstances. So I don't want to lose sight of the amazing progress that is getting made.
Brandon, I also want to say that, you know, that means if the political environment is better, it can be so much better and so much good as well. And I think some of the comments that I'm seeing in the chat are really sort of focusing and zooming in on 2 things. One of them is the big players. I mean, one comment says, you know, top 100 corporations are responsible for more than 70% of global emissions. And that, you know, how do we, you know, ensure for political participation and really encourage these kinds of new economic models and new economic ways of production, clean production, sustainable production. And I think one thing that gets overlooked, we can come up with these great economic models. I mean, I come up with the prosumer economy, others with degrowth and so forth. But how do we change the political environment? There has been a very sustained effort on minimum wage, minimum living wage. And this sustainable movement on minimum living wage has made it all the way to the WEF. And it's like on the discourse, people are talking about minimum living wage now everywhere, all around the world. But no one is really talking about these political and economic interests and how to really control them. And we need a movement that now advocates for sortition, for demarche, not like the democracy that we understand today, which even gives power to interests, which give power to economic interests, but a new kind of a sortition. It's also called demarchy. We have the technology now. We can distribute power to the participation and to the masses, and it eliminates a lot of these interests. And once those big players lose their influence, really the smaller and the more sort of sustainable enterprises, the social enterprises, can start flourishing. And
that's not possible in all countries, Uygar, is it? I mean, there's a comment in the chat that's saying, you know, all these ideas are nice and possible in democracies, but how about Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, the Middle Americas? How do you incentivize people to take any action there because of the power of the extractive industry and their deep intertwinement with the government? So what could we do in that situation?
Political struggle, political and economic struggle, like everything that has, you know, in the world, that was the main change. I mean, everywhere we have seen change, it has come from people, from masses of people, challenging power, speaking truth to power, and doing the right things. And this is how change becomes. Otherwise, we can just throw our hands into the air and say, okay, we're doomed. Since we're not going to do that, I think it's going to be a political struggle, coming up with the right models and struggling for them, fighting for them. That's the only way.
Thank you for that comment, Uygar. I want to walk us back towards one thing that Brandon mentioned at the beginning of his speech, which is this idea of culture and the cultural shift that is needed in order to transition our economies from what we have now to what is possible. And I also read one of the comments in the chat that was talking about this paradigm of the relationship between humans and nature. And actually at Ashoka, we've done a survey among all our fellows around the globe. And one of the things that we heard from them is that we need to shift this paradigm from moving toward and move from a mentality that is, you know, humans have dominion over nature. Nature is a resource for us to extract, towards a paradigm that recognizes that we need to collaborate with nature. Basically, you know, this cultural shift, this mentality shift that does not put any more humanity and humans at the center of everything is arguably what is needed. But how do you build these ideas, you know, beyond these intellectual circles in which we sometimes live in, and the bubbles in which we are, to other communities?
It might be a little bit of an irony that I think that a lot of the people who live in the rural areas where a lot of the extraction happens actually are the model for living in tune with the landscape. I think living humble lives, that, you know, reuse and recycling in rural areas is just oftentimes, it's just a normal part of what happens. We really couldn't fathom that you wouldn't reuse something 5 or 6 or 7 different times for different purposes. We tend to have, you know, gardens and like to grow our own food and can and do preservatives and keep fixed, you know, sew our clothes and make our quilts and be as self-sufficient as possible. So I think there's an opportunity to sort of flip the conversation here of, instead of sort of elites from cities flying in on airplanes and, you know, telling rural people you have to change now because, you know, you cause climate change, which is not really true or fair. It can be much more of a learning from each other. I think rural and urban areas learning from each other and celebrating that rural people, miners even in rural areas, have a lot to teach the world about how to be place-based and how to live in harmony with nature and on a smaller scale. We have to redefine what we call the good life, and that instead of, you know, getting a high-paying white-collar job in a skyscraper where you get to fly all over the place, maybe it's a little bit more humble than that, and that's not only okay but good and ultimately more sustainable.
In our case, Corina, what we have in our community for that cultural shift is we use ethical tenets to a certain degree. There's like the golden rule, right? Don't do unto others that you don't want to be done to yourself. It sounds very simple, but once you exchange the other with every other being, that means, living beings, even rocks and landscapes, if you don't want it to be done to yourself, if you don't do unto the others, or if you treat others the way you would like to be treated, and in that, of course, first ask before treating. So that is essentially, with that simple rule, if people take it to their heart and live by that, a cultural shift also starts happening. So it becomes one that is not a dominant one, but that in which one sees herself as part of a community, and that also changes that mindset a little bit, I think.
Speaking about mindsets and culture, I cannot help but remind us all that the Ashoka Changemaker Summit has just begun today, and we have a full 3 days of celebration and inspiration ahead of us, with many, many panels around planet and climate. And hopefully all of you that are interested in this topic can also join the Planet and Climate chat in Swapcard, so that we can stay connected throughout the whole duration of the summit and even beyond that. Because, for instance, tonight, I think it's 8 a.m. Central Eastern European time, or 7 p.m. Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern European time. There's a beautiful panel with Ashoka Fellows from Canada that are showing particularly how the teachings of the indigenous communities in Canada can actually be a silver bullet for fixing climate problems that we've caused onto ourselves as humanity in the past decades or so. And I'm really curious to listen into that panel, but there's going to be countless others. I'm looking at the chat, and there seem to be many questions coming up. Irene, do you want to share with us your favorite, or something that triggered some type of reaction in you that we can ask our panelists to react to?
Well, I thought there was a question earlier on about the role of young people. Let's see. And then
I think there were a couple around young people as well. So yeah, there seems to be a topic there.
Gonzalo, yeah.
Please, Gonzalo, go ahead.
I saw some other questions about the role of the United States, and how this is going to change. I would like to make a comment. So regarding climate change, the fight of climate change, we have had a difficult or complex years, after the Paris Agreement, that was so great, due to the announcement of the USA to leave the Paris Agreement, those years were really difficult, because there were no incentive from big blocs to present like ambitious approaches. But we are entering this new decade with hope. Why? Because we are having at the same time this technological revolution of green technologies. You were speaking about this cultural change, and the problem with culture is that it takes a lot of time to change culture. But the good thing about this crisis is that it has changed the culture about environment, and now there is a growing environmental awareness. And another important positive element is that the large economies are presenting proposals for climate neutrality. So the European Union for 2050, China for 2060, and be careful with China, because China is doing a lot of things, and today is the first investor in clean technologies. Japan is also presented a proposal for climate neutrality. So we are seeing that now with the US government betting for climate change, 3/4 of the world economy are supporting climate neutrality for mid-century. And this is a big change. So in this positive context, we have the responsibility and the opportunity and the urgency to change things. And I'm convinced that this decade we are entering is going to be a key decade. And I think we have to work together. I'm convinced about the importance of alliances. Alliances are not important and the only way to move forward. So I think people, NGOs, government and firms, we need to work together and to join forces to really change things, because now with this positive context, I think this decade is going to be the decade for change.
Thank you for that optimist message, Gonzalo. I was also looking at the time, we only have 4 minutes left from the panel, and yet the questions are flowing and flowing and flowing. So I hope that in the Planet and Climate chat on Swapcard, we will be able to have conversations on all of those, because I think that all of the attendees at the Ashoka Changemaker Summit have some very, very strong and very interesting opinions on all of these points. But what you've said, Gonzalo, about what the next decade holds in front of us is actually what I wanted to also ask Wigar and Brandon. It's been the most unusual year, at least since I can remember, definitely 2020. So what does 2021 and beyond hold for you, and how does your world and your work look like in the coming year, and maybe even, as Gonzalo said, in the coming decade, because long-term planning is something that is crucial for a more balanced relationship between humanity and planet, I think. As a final remark, I would say.
Okay.
Why don't you begin?
All right, I'll begin. So I am seeing a big shift. Young people do not want to work in big corporations and be another cog in the wheel. They want to have different, meaningful lives. And a meaningful life can only come through social enterprises, which are not there to maximize profit, but that are there to essentially create better nature, better society, and work for a meaning. And those are the kinds of works that young people want to work with. I think everyone wants to really work in, not only young people, everyone wants to live in a job like that. So we need to create more jobs like this. And to create more jobs like this, we need people to be collaborating with each other, and we need them to support each other. There was a question about COVID and how did it affect these small enterprises. The small enterprises that are in Good for Trust have all increased their sales because people have come to our platform, shopped from smaller little enterprises, because at times of crisis, people bond together, they support the small one, they have a meaning for their support, because they know that through their spending, they're creating livelihood for those smaller enterprises. So essentially, I am seeing a rise in those. I am seeing a drop in profit maximization. I'm seeing a future in which we see more meaningful organizations, more meaningful enterprises that come together, that bond together. And through that bonding and coming together, I believe a new economy is emerging and will emerge no matter what. Because if we don't, I think there is no future. And therefore, we all know by heart that if we want to have a future, this is what we are going to create together. That's my last words.
I'm seeing that too, and I'm seeing that deep in coal country, in the U.S. So if I'm seeing that here, I know it's possible even under really difficult, political, economic, social circumstances. And it very often is young people who are starting new businesses, starting new organizations, and insisting on a better way. And it's inspiring to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for the final word, Brandon. I would argue, as the final remarks of the moderator, that probably something that we've learned from the panel, and not only from the panel, but I think in general, is that everyone has a role to play, and that climate action is, an everyone everywhere mission. And I would try to not create, dichotomies between those that work in corporations, those that work in small businesses, and so on. I think it's a question of what is the role of each and every one of us as individuals and as representatives of our organizations to really shift the needle, to really create a more harmonized model between humanity and planet, and ultimately, to cut in at least by half the world emissions in the next 10 years or so. So, but you've shown us that it's possible, and that the ingredients, at least some of them, are in there. So thank you very much for being with us today, for sharing your views. Thank you very much for all those that attended the session, for their active participation. And I'm really, really sorry that we couldn't take up all of these interesting questions and remarks, but let's move these conversations in the Planet and Climate Chat of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit, and do join us later today, tomorrow, and in the last day of the Ashoka Changemaker Summit to similarly inspiring and action-oriented conversations with Ashoka Fellows, corporate partners, business leaders, philanthropists, and young people. let's end with that note to notice that the climate movement is getting younger, and that's good. So thank you very much for being with